morning. Welcome to Studio One, coming to you from our studio located on the campus of the University of North Dakota. I'm Tom Buehring, your host. Up ahead in this half hour, we'll discuss how landscape affects the globe politically and socially. Geography specialist Stanley Brunn joins us. We'll also learn about the changes and challenges of child rearing in the 90s with columnist Gail Stewart Hand. And in our Open Door segment, Canadian fashion entrepreneur extraordinaire Peter Nygard. But first this morning, let's go to the news desk with Amy Bremser. Amy?
Thanks, Tom, and good morning, everyone. Convicted Iran-Contra scandal figure Oliver North is on the witness stand again today, this time as the prosecution witness against his old boss, John Poindexter. Federal prosecutors say North and Poindexter covered up the arms for hostages deal with Iran during President Reagan's term. The chair of the University of North Dakota's physiology department will be fired if he and the dean of the medical school can't reach a mutual settlement. A female student has accused Dr. Richard Rose of forcing her to have sex with him. UND Affirmative Action Officer Sally Page says Rose has 7 days to appeal the termination or negotiate a settlement. If he doesn't, the notice will be forwarded to UND President Tom Clifford. Campus crime is increasing across the country, and many schools are doing an effective job of covering it up. Student Press Law Director Mark Goodman says only 10% of America's colleges and universities provide statistics for the FBI's annual crime report. The lack of campus crime data has prompted U.S. Representative Bill Goodling of Pennsylvania to sponsor a bill that would force most institutions to report crime information to the FBI Uniform Crime Report. UND has a new student body president this morning. Audrey Jager beat Mike Michelson and incumbent John Hitchcock in Wednesday's election. Jager got 456 votes, beating Michelson by only 5. In the vice presidential race, Sarah Fugelberg beat Kim Brewer. It's springtime, the time when young students' fancies turn to flights of no, not love, they turn to flights of Mazatlan. And as Andrew Brayford reports, spring break trips are upon us.
They're escaping by plane. They're escaping by bus. They're even escaping by car. However they are doing it, UND students are looking south to the fun and sun of spring break. Lori Gillespie, a travel consultant for Brecky Travel, says that while each year brings a new generation of travelers, spring break hotspots remain the same.
Daytona Beach, Orlando, I would say Mazatlan, Jamaica, Cancun have all been popular spots for people. There's been a lot of inquiries of people going down to Phoenix for the spring break and the California area, San Diego and Los Angeles.
How much can you expect to pay for a week at, say, Mazatlan? The average price is about $450. Gillespie says that a lot of students just want to go home, so Brecky Travel handles large numbers of individual trips. Not all trips are so lonely. The Grand Forks River Rat rugby team is planning a team trip to a tournament in Jamaica. Fellow River Rat Jeff Beach says they hope to keep costs down by going as a group.
Yeah, we started planning back in October, actually. We were originally going to go in April, and then for all the college students that were going to go, we put it over spring break.
The exodus will begin next week. Soon, friends and classmates will be disappearing, leaving behind only their parkas and long underwear. And I will be one of them. For Studio One News, I'm Andrew Brayford. See you at the beach.
The top seed Lady Sioux basketball team hosts Augustana in the first round of the North Central Regional Tournament tonight. The Sioux are riding high on the heels of the team's first ever conference title. The team is sparked by the spectacular play of senior standout and all-time Sioux scoring leader Doreen Heisler. Heisler took top honors again as NCC Player of the Week following her 2-game 47-point scoring spree last weekend. Wednesday, she was named NCC Player of the Year. Game time is 8 o'clock tonight at the Hislop Sports Center. And that's all for Studio One News. Tom?
All right, Aim. If you're looking to relocate, then you're probably considering factors like salary, cost of living, cultural events, transportation. Location, location, location quickly turns into decisions, decisions, decisions. This bit of information might help. A metropolitan area study shows how some American cities rank in these categories. In cities with a population over 2 million, Nassau, Suffolk, New York rank first in salaries and cost of living. Denver scored the highest in availability of mass transit and commuting time. And of course, New York placed first in cultural events. In cities with populations of 250,000 to 1 million, Oklahoma City was first in economic outlook, Las Vegas first in transportation, and New Haven, Connecticut #1 in the arts. Who rates first in weather? Maybe Studio One meteorologist Jay Searles can answer that question. Jay?
Thanks, Tom. I don't think so quite this morning. Quite a bit of fog and showers and quite a bit of drizzle, as a matter of fact, across Iowa and southern Minnesota and into our area. That's a result of this storm system pulling up quite a bit of moisture out of the Gulf. Not any severe weather or heavy weather reported with it, just a lot of nuisance weather reported with it. Across much of the west, a little developing storm system over the Nevada region. That'll spread quite a bit of snow through the weekend through the mountains. If you're heading skiing for spring break, keep an eye on that system. That could cause some hazardous driving conditions, and otherwise clear skies through much of the south, warm temperatures across the Gulf Coast states, rain in through the northwest, and this Pacific frontal system will be moving through our area, bringing with it some nice conditions for the weekend. And temperatures, you can see teens across much of the northeast. That's the coolest part of the country this morning. Otherwise, warm, mild 30s dominate much of the west, and a few 60s across the Gulf Coast. That warm air will slowly be working its way through much of the western part of the United States. Currently at 7 in the Grand Forks area, under cloudy skies. The temperature is 34 degrees. Winds are out of the southwest at 12 miles per hour, and the relative humidity is 84%. The tri-state region map this morning shows 30s across much of our area, 34 in Grand Forks, 36 up in Minot for the warm spot. Otherwise, it looks pretty good, and I'll be back a little bit later with the Red River Valley weekend outlook and the national forecast. Tom?
As you pull out that swimwear, let's put things into its proper perspective this morning. That 10 pounds you've been struggling to shed may belong right where it is. While some 34 million adults in the U.S. are too heavy, twice that many think they are. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, 24% of men and 27% of women are truly overweight. However, 39% of men and 50% of women only think they are. So things aren't as bad as they may seem. Now that's the good news. The bad news, of the 26 million people who lost weight last year, an average of 16 pounds each, only half will gain it back again this year. The political and social impacts of landscape shaped by war and peace, that and more when Studio One continues.
The stiletto, outlawed in most major cities. The trench knife, it boasts a 7-inch solid steel blade. The survival knife, designed to cut through virtually anything. Yet the most dangerous knife of all may be the one we use to eat too much high-fat food, the ordinary table knife. For a free booklet on how to help reduce your risk of cancer and heart disease through low-fat eating, call 1-800-EAT-LEAN.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed days, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
If you're not recycling, you're throwing it all away.
Welcome back to Studio One. Intense military conflict and a virtual absence of conflict both exist at local, national, and international levels. Geographers are studying the components of peace and war landscapes to better understand how they affect political ideologies of the people who live there. Stanley Brunn examines the coexistence and overlapping of peace and war in many regions. He is the professor and chair of the Department of Geography at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. Stanley Brunn, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good to be here.
Good to meet you. Now, when we refer to war and peace landscapes, we're primarily talking about war and peace at borders and locations, correct?
Well, that could be one part in terms of border locations, but there could be many other elements of military and peace landscapes that could be away from borders. For example, you could take a look at training bases, you could take a look at airports, you could take a look at, on the other hand, you could take a look at sanctuary churches, where you find local groups that may be participating with other secular groups and trying to bring refugees here, hospitals, for example. But there are many different elements of the peace and military landscapes that are visible, some that are invisible. And we're trying to do as geographers to get people to think about those, where they are and whether people really want them in their communities.
Current examples, Mr. Brunn, of where war and peace landscapes exist today.
Well, I would consider the 300 missile silos in North Dakota to be an element of a military landscape. And I'm sure the people in the military would probably consider them part of the peace landscape, but I would not agree with them. The peace guards between U.S. and Canada is a good example of a peace landscape. Or as I said, there are sanctuary churches, that's another element of a peace landscape. Or you do find some buffer zones often between countries that are in conflict, and those are peace landscapes.
In America, we're seeing a peace landscape with Canada, fortunately, and it's a blessing to consider. We've never
Sure.
been at war and at odds with our neighboring nations. However, does that paint a picture of a lopsided perspective for us as Americans?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, in our global relations with other countries, because we don't see a current war landscape,
Right.
does that paint a lopsided perspective?
Well, I think, I'm not sure I understand lopsided perspective means, but I think in terms of the perspective of the U.S. and Canada presents a perspective of realities, the fact there hasn't been a protracted period of conflict. But there are other parts of the world where we do find intense fighting, whether it be in Lebanon or Israel and its neighbors sometimes, or in the case of Central America, we find some, or we find other parts of the world, South Africa, we still find some conflict, or this morning's news had to do with conflict in Haiti. So I think it's important for us to realize that there are areas where we had long, stable borders, maybe of several centuries, where there has not been conflict. But there are other parts of the world where there is still intense fighting, either internally or maybe with cross-border raids.
What would be the advantages of a wartime landscape for the people living there?
Well, I can't think of very many.
I can't either. How about peace?
Well, the elements of peace landscape means you can live a less stressful life, and you can get along with whatever your business is dealing with. And I think that's what most people want. But remember, the decisions that are often made about military landscapes, they don't take census and they don't take a poll of the people who live there. They just often put them there, whether it be, we're going to put an armed garrison here, we're going to put a fort here, we're going to put naval ships here, we're going to put, or this is the area we're going to be using for invading into a neighboring country. The victims are the people who live there. And I've seen military landscapes, for example, in northern Israel, and they're devastated. I would not want to live there. I mean, I wouldn't want to live in a place where I knew there was going to be continued violence or threat of violence or cross-border raids, whether it be by air or by land or incursion. I just think that's not a very healthy way to live.
Does time heal? Or are the people affected as this is passed on from generation to generation?
Well, sometimes I think we learn. Sometimes I'm not sure we do learn. But sometimes I think we have people in control of our destinies that don't want us to learn. If you took a poll of most people, I think most people would be interested in looking at resolutions to conflict. I don't think human nature is necessarily violent in terms of wanting to be an aggressor and kill people and maim people and children and adults and economies. But remember, oftentimes those decisions are made by other people than the people who live in those areas that are affected. For example, even in the case of East Europe right now, I think that many people are wanting some control of their own destiny, so they're forming political parties, or they've ousting the Communist Party because they feel that those people have been not really representing them.
Stanley Brunn, thanks for coming on this morning.
Good to be here.
Appreciate getting up early and joining us.
Okay.
Stanley Brunn, our Open Door segment. When we return, Canada's fashion entrepreneur Peter Nygard, when Studio One continues.
Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say.
The power of teaching.
The world won't get no better if we're just
The power to wake up young minds. The power to wake up the world. Teachers have that power. Reach for the power. Teach. I'm Edward James Olmos, and we're recruiting new teachers. Call 1-800-45-TEACH.
In 1967, Peter Nygard took control of a small women's sportswear company in Winnipeg and renamed it Tanger. 20 years later, with annual sales exceeding $200 million, he owns the largest clothing manufacturing company in Canada. Our Open Doors segment looks at one of Man Watchers Incorporated's most watchable men this year, President of Nygard International, Peter Nygard.
I think the fun part of this whole business is fashion, and fashion is image making. You know, the word fashion itself has to do with constant change and the perception of what is in and what is the thing to wear and what is the latest thing to wear, and it's the concept of continually changing and really building an obsolescence. You know, there's nothing more obsolete than a wardrobe, a woman's wardrobe particularly. I mean, a woman has a closet full of clothes and can nothing to wear. You know, so it's a wonderful business. So fashion is, in fact, a standard of living that the North American and the European consumers have, and it's an expression of that.
From your position, Peter, do you ever question that the priority of it? Is it overemphasized in the U.S. or in Canada? No?
No, that's what gives us those thrills in life, you know. That's what, take that away from particularly a woman, and you know, you got a pretty unhappy woman. You know, so why try to talk ourselves into a Chinese culture where everybody uses the same uniform type of thing? I mean, this is exactly what separated us from developing nations, is that we can put wonderful clothes on. And of course, you can have wonderful houses and wonderful cars, but when you get to the clothing, that's the most important thing for the woman particularly. Feed it. And this is what gives us a thrill and a change of clothing, and you feel so wonderful and good. You can't suppress that kind of feeling. It's a natural feeling.
Whose image are you selling, or whose image do you sell?
Well, it has to come to a lot to the image that I perceive our company to have, and perceive the woman who's wearing our clothes to have. It's carefully cultivated from what is generally out there, you know, other people's feeling towards the so-called image. But I definitely take a specific approach to it and say, okay, I don't want to reject certain parts of other people's image making, and we build our own on it. And we sort of identify our own customer and see what she would look the best in, and then build an image for her. So it really comes from our own designing group's creative think tank type of feeling, you know, and into that is fed thousands of pieces of information, you know, and then comes out this image.
I would imagine somebody in your position selling a bit of your perspective to the public. Somebody in your position has got to be pretty secure about who they are and what they're doing. True?
Well, I've never lacked from confidence, I guess, if that's what you're asking. You never get completely secure. You know, as you get older and supposedly wiser, you find out you know less and less, and particularly in this industry, it's not a secure industry. I think what you have to do in industry is act like you're secure. You know, there's so much insecurity, the retailers, the consumers, that if you come out positive and secure and sort of reflect that, that's what they're looking. That's one of the big issues of selling. Selling a product is the total convincing that you are right to know what the hell you're doing about. But it would be naive to say that that I would think that I'm always right. You know, it makes you pretty humble fast. You know.
When we talk about having an eye for apparel, how much of that is instinct? How much of that is developed?
You have to be born with it, just like a good race runner, or with a good athlete, or a good singer. Then you develop it. You know, you develop it on your history, and by studying other people's work, and by studying your own work, and by studying the market trends, and by doing market research. But instinctively, you have to have some sixth sense about it. You have to have a taste of fashion or creativity, and then you have to develop that.
How have women changed, say, over the last 10, 15 years?
They got more quality-oriented, much more. They're prepared to pay a lot more, not even a little bit more, a lot more for just that one right thing, instead of getting volumes of the product. I think they're much more quality-oriented. The North American woman is quickly catching up with the European woman. I say catching up because the European woman has spent a lot more money on clothes per item than North American has. And we're quickly finding in this country too that we just can't send volumes of polyester pants. We want that one great blazer made of cashmere or something, you know, and we'd rather pay $500 for that than buy 6 outfits that are $50 a piece or something, you know. So there is now a real fine-tuning going on, you know, sweeping the country. And I don't think we've ever gone through a bigger fashion revolution that we are going right through. Now there's a big change going on right now in the marketplace.
Mr. Fashion of Canada, Peter Nygard. It's 20 minutes past the hour when Studio One continues Raising Kids in the 90s with columnist Gail Stewart Hand.
From the McGruff files, the case of the Tucson tip-off. In the Midtown area of Tucson, Arizona, things were no doggone good. Burglaries were up, spirits were down, and folks were fed up. So they worked with police to get their neighborhood back. They organized community watch groups. In just 3 weeks, burglaries were down 30%. The people of Tucson are making a difference, and you can too. Write this down and I'll show you how you can help take a bite out of crime.
Nurturing a child in today's world brings not only joy and fulfillment, but also some challenges. Lots of them. After all, parenting is a lifetime career. Our next guest believes in improving the lives of children by educating parents and adults who care for children. Gail Stewart Hand is a columnist and co-hosts the radio program Considering Children, which discusses child rearing with experts and people who have a concern for the child of the 90s. Gail Stewart Hand, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Appreciate the chance.
Now, this isn't a loaded question, but with social stress and social problems, are people pessimistic or discouraged about raising kids?
I don't know that they're pessimistic or discouraged, but I think, frankly, that they ought to be, or at least be concerned, because I think increasingly we're relying upon other people to raise our children in very formative years. And I saw something once on a t-shirt, and even though it's a slogan, I think that that's really appropriate to think about. Behind every working parent is an underpaid child care provider. And while we in the society give a lot of lip service about how important it is to nurture the young, it's the cliche of motherhood and apple pie, these are some of the most lowly paid, lowest status people in our society. And I think that it's really an indication that parenting is really kind of in the dark ages in terms of getting any kind of recognition. And those of us who care about the future of children understand that those of us who work with children have to look for opportunities to educate others about the importance of training people who work with children to give them the most nurturing and developmentally appropriate environment possible.
Gail, by the end of this decade, we're going to see children of two-income families become parents, even reaching into the next decade. How is this going to impact the family structure as we approach the 21st century?
That's an interesting question, I think, Tom, and one that gives me a lot of pause, because I think already we're starting to see young parents who were the products of a two-income home. And I think that a lot of times they have not had a lot of necessarily good parental involvement because economic pressures have compelled both parents to work outside the home, that there is no one for whom taking care of their primary needs is the parent's primary focus. And I think that that is a real loss. And to get back to one of your first questions, I think it's not just a challenge for parents. I think it's a challenge also for the early childhood educators, as I mentioned, and also corporate America to understand that it's in society's best interest to start taking care of the needs of families. And I would also say, not only just for little tiny children, but increasingly people our age are having to be concerned about dealing with the needs of our elderly parents. And I think there's a whole spectrum of family issues that job situations need to be a lot more sensitive to if they want to have happy, productive employees and beat the Japanese, all of which they want to do pretty badly.
Gail, approaching the 90s, will child care have a greater selling point for job recruiting?
That I'm not sure of. It's a possibility if we get some national child care legislation that would allow for some basic minimum standards both in training and in pay for these providers. I think increasingly the more people know about how important these early formative years are, I think that it will only follow that the pay and prestige will be a result of that. And in that sense, yeah, I think it's a very important job choice for some people.
Gail, is this statistic accurate that I have the U.S. ranks beside third world countries in subsidized daycare? That accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate.
Any solutions on the horizon?
Talk to your congressman, sir. That's who has the money. That is the whole body of people who, pre-election, you couldn't turn off the TV fast enough. constantly, you see them surrounded by little drooling babies in child care centers. Have we seen any action on that since the elections? I say not, and it's because parents are incredibly stressed, have a lot of pressures on them, and that just as we get out of dealing personally with our child care needs, we have other pressing kinds of concerns, and so then it's a whole new set of parents dealing with child care, and we're off worrying about hockey lessons or whatever. So it's a constantly changing population. Therefore, they're not as politically effective as they might be. But I hope that'll change.
Gail, just when we get you going, we're pulling the plug on you. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Appreciate the chance. Bye-bye.
Gail Stewart Hand. We'll take a look at the weekend forecast when Studio One continues.
For some people, doing their basic tax forms by themselves can make them feel like they're climbing the walls.
Renee, my full name is, I remember that, Dependence.
If you need help, free tax help is available from IRS-trained volunteers. Find them by calling 1-800-424-1040. They'll make your taxes less taxing.
No matter what you're running from, there's someone to run to. Covenant House. No matter what your problem is, we're here to listen. Wherever you are, we can get you help. So call us now on the 9 line. It's free. 1-800 and keep dialing 9.
If you're headed to Minneapolis for the weekend, you have several options of entertainment to choose from. Beginning tonight, the Highwaymen, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Johnny Cash perform together at the Met Sports Center with an 8 o'clock start. Also tonight at 8, Air Supply performs across town at the Orpheum Theater. Tomorrow night, your choice between hockey or basketball. The North Stars host the New York Rangers at the Met Sports Center in Bloomington, and the Timberwolves go up against the Phoenix Suns at the Metrodome. For more ticket information on any of these events, you can contact Ticketmaster in Minneapolis. Jay Searles joins us for one last look at the weekend forecast. Jay?
Thanks again, Tom. Pretty warm weather is going to be breaking out across much of the east as this little storm system which has moved through our area, that cold front which was going through our area this morning, will stall out through the central United States, bringing in warm air ahead of it. Warm, mild air will be spreading into the northeast as well, where those cold temperatures were. Showers, scattered showers across parts of Oklahoma and Kansas. Across the west, that storm system will continue to organize. It will actually drift backwards to northern California and spread quite a bit of snow through much of the northern Rockies and the southern Rockies as well. Otherwise, high pressure will dominate the northern plains, bringing us clear skies and mild temperatures through the weekends. So for the forecast in detail, after a cloudy start, we can expect clearing skies by this afternoon, a high of 43 degrees. Winds will become westerly at 10 to 15 miles per hour, and there's a 20% chance of a shower before noon, though. Tonight, clear skies, a low of 28 degrees. Winds will be light and variable with no chance of any precipitation. On Saturday, partly cloudy, warm, a high of 40 to 45, and on Sunday, mostly cloudy with a high of 40 to 45 degrees again. So that's the way things look for the weekend. Have a pretty good weekend. Tom?
All right, Jay, like you folks, we got to run. See you in 2 weeks on the 23rd. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.